What's going on, everyone? Jack here from Half Chrome, and this is a tiny whip that I put together using some parts from various different whips that I had laying around, and it's pretty awesome. I'm going to tell you about this, but I also want to walk through different ways that you can make your whip better, and some of those are just in Betaflight. All right, let's get into it. So let's talk about what I have here. I took my Mobula 6 Eco version, that's the one with HDZero, and I basically removed the top, the flight controller, the VTX, the camera, and this canopy, and I transplanted it on my Meteor 65 Pro. And the reason I did that is because the Meteor 65 Pro has a larger propeller, right? The frame is actually different on this. Now it's still 65 millimeters, but I can get a 35 millimeter prop instead of a 31 millimeter prop, which means I'm getting more power. These are also 0802 motors instead of 0702. These are 19,000 kV, and I just felt like the larger motor with the larger prop was a better combo, right? And what I was hoping is that it would fly more like this. This is my Air 65 Racing Edition. I love this thing. I love the way that it flies acro. Now the HDZero with Eco has this awesome camera, but it was a little heavy on these 0702s, or at least I thought so. So I thought this might be a good way to go. Turns out it's pretty awesome. Now I know not everyone has a frame like this laying around, but the frames are fairly inexpensive. You can pick them up from Beta FPV. There might be other versions on the market, but just this extra prop size was pretty awesome. I thought it would kill my flight times, but it turns out it was actually pretty comparable, right? Because as you go up in prop size, they actually get a little bit more efficient as well. So I was getting about 2 minutes give or take on most of these 300 milliamp hour batteries, which is roughly what I was getting on the smaller Eco. It is a little bit punchier, and I felt it just handled a little bit better. It still seems a little heavy. I think it was clocking in at like 22, 23 grams, so it's not ultra light here, but that extra power compensates for some of that weight. I love for there to be more options with this larger frame size. There's a handful. Happy Model did one a while back. Maybe it was Eachine. I've got that somewhere, but I do like this larger prop, especially if you're going to add HDZero. I love HDZero, and it's just a little bit heavier than an analog camera, so it's nice to have this extra prop size and extra power. You know, one of the complaints about the HDZero camera specifically for this Eco was it seemed oversaturated, and I never really bothered, but yeah, you can adjust that saturation pretty easily. To do that, plug your camera in and then just hold this left stick, the throttle, to the inside. When you do that, you can see that my menu pops up to adjust the camera settings and lower your saturation. Pretty simple. Now, smart audio is a little different on HDZero as well. It's going to be down and in on both of the sticks to get to that. So if you're looking to build one of these, I'll leave some links in the description down below where you get some of the parts and things to make this little guy happen. But if you already have a tiny whip and you're like, well, what else could I do? I'm going to run through some of the different things that I would recommend doing here, starting with welder glue, or E6000. I mentioned that in a handful of my videos, but it is like the go-to glue for fixing tiny whips because it's kind of rubbery, and it has a little bit of flex to it. So if you're you break a spindle on a frame here, you don't have to replace the whole thing. Kind of get it in place, let it set overnight, and it just does the job. Another thing you're going to want to do is put a dab of that glue right over this UFL connector right here, because if you don't and you crash and that pops off, your VTX could heat up and cause actual damage. That happened to me in my Mobula 6 2020. Now I kind of get a little bit of extra snow. It still works, but it's not as good as it once was. So add a little bit of glue to help keep that thing on. Now I'm going to connect to Betaflight, and I'm going to walk through the things that I suggest you do with your quads in Betaflight to make them fly better, or just to make things more convenient for you. So first, you're going to need to connect your quad to your computer with whatever cable is necessary. I'm connecting my Air 65 Racing drone here, and it requires this little connector to make it to this USB-C. Now that I'm in Betaflight, let's take a look at the things that you should be checking. First thing I would do is go into this configuration tab. Over here where it says D-Shot Beacon Configuration, For whatever reason, manufacturers are not turning this on, and this is super helpful. Turn on the RX set. I actually turn on RX Lost as well. That allows me to set a switch on my controller here to make this beep. Makes it a lot easier to find, especially if you fly outside. Do not fly outside without doing this first. Another thing people can do, and this is kind of fun, is change the name on the craft. This one is the Air 65R, but I could say half chrome, I could say Jack, I can make it say whatever I want, and that can appear in the goggles, and that's kind of fun. Now, after you've turned the D-Shot beacon on, go into the modes tab. In other modes, you can set your arm, your angle, your horizon, your acro, however you want, but this is where that matters. You add the beeper. I always put it on aux 3 so that I can make it beep. But if you don't turn this on, then you can't make it beep at will, only if it gets disconnected from the radio. Here's a tip, especially if you're a beginner, turn some of these things on. You definitely need battery voltage, craft name, we talked about that, but this one right here, crosshairs. Throw the crosshairs on. It's going to help you line up little gaps. Super helpful, especially for beginners. I also like to turn on my battery voltage post-flight. That way I can see, where are my batteries at? Do I need to discharge them for storage? Which I'm going to talk about a little later. Now, the last thing we're talking about is crash recovery. If you fly this thing in acro mode, make sure you turn on crash recovery. You're going to type set crash, and it's picking it up here. Crash recovery equals on, boom, save, boom, and you're good to go. One more thing. Go to your PID tuning. Some people mess around with this a ton. You probably don't have to, but if you fly in angle mode, your angle limit right here, this one is 60%. Now, if you bump that up, it just makes this snap back into place a little bit more aggressively. This one's at 60, which is okay. Sometimes I bump it up to 75 if I want it to be a little bit snappier. So that's something else you could look into. So another important way to upgrade your Tiny Whoop is the battery connector. This is an A30 connector. This is a BT 2.0, and these are kind of regarded as the two best for 1S whoops. The old standard used to be this PH 2.0, and it doesn't do as well as either the BT 2.0 or the A30 from G&B. And these two are also cross-compatible, so it doesn't matter. You can buy A30 batteries if you have a BT 2.0 connector and vice versa. So the short is, if you have a PH 2.0, I'd replace it with either one of those. And that kind of depends on which batteries you have or which batteries you buy. A lot of times if you buy these A30 batteries, they may come with a connector. Same thing with these BT 2.0s. I do really like these new lava batteries from Beta FPV. They're pretty solid. But G&B makes a decent battery as well. HDZero nitro connectors are supposed to be cream of the crop, but they're hard to find with anything other than a PH 2.0. Now, there is one more thing on the horizon. Emax is actually making an EM2.0 battery, which is supposed to be a better connector than both the A30 and the BT 2.0. And not only is it better in terms of performance than both of these, it's compatible with 1 and 2S, so it's going to replace the XT30. I think that could be really good. Now, I don't have any of those batteries. I do have the connectors, and before you ask, no, they're not compatible with anything else. They're kind of a standalone, so Emax is making a new standalone connector. We'll see how that fares. I'm excited for the 2S stuff. We'll see how it works with 1S when we get a good battery with one of those connectors, but that may be the way to go in the future, but that's to be determined. Now, whatever you decide to do with your batteries, make sure you get a battery charger that can handle charging and storage charging. When you're done with flying these batteries, they don't tend to last very long, and that's because people don't take good care of them. You want to storage charge your batteries, and you need a special battery charger to do that. They're about $20, $25, and you can charge up to 6 batteries at a time. I have one. I'm thinking about picking up another just because when I go flying whoops, I charge 6, then I gotta charge 6 again. It'd probably be nice just to be able to charge 12 at a time and then get going. You want a ton of batteries for these little quads because they don't last very long, 2 minutes or so, give or take, for each one of these batteries. Now, you can also upgrade the frame, and when I say upgrade, I mean get a lighter frame. This is the Light AF frame from Newbie Drone. The Air 65 frames, the Mobula 6 frames, those are almost identical and they're super light, especially compared to some of the older style 65 millimeter frames. I did mention the Meteor Pro frame has the space for larger propellers. So, you can kind of think of, do you want to go lighter? Do you want to go more durable? Do you want to go with a spot for bigger props? I'll see if I can't find a handful of those different options, and I'll throw them in the description down below. And also motors, right? Are you an 0702 or 0802 guy, bigger or smaller? What about KV? The higher the KV, the faster they'll spin, quicker you'll burn through batteries, but the faster you'll go. Also props, right? The racing and the freestyle. The freestyle has a less aggressive prop. The racing has kind of this more traditional, larger, more aggressive prop, but a less aggressive prop will save you some. There's 2-bladed props, 3-bladed props. 2-bladed props will spin a little bit faster. They tend to be a little bit lighter. They might make you a little bit quicker, but they won't corner nearly as well as a 3-bladed prop. So some other things to think about. Also canopy, right? Do you want one of these super lightweight canopy straps, or do you want something that's a little more robust? You can certainly get a full canopy that's going to protect the insides, or do you want to go as light as possible? You kind of have to weigh these different decisions. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of different ways to customize the Whoop to make it best for you. Now, I'm really only talking about 65 millimeter drones here, but that kind of applies for 75 and 85 millimeter too. You kind of have to figure out what is it that you're trying to get out of this drone. Do you want it for slow cruising? Do you want it for flying inside? Do you want it for flying outside? All of these different things matter. How you fly, where you fly, and what you fly also matters. People ask me all the time, what sort of equipment do I use? Well, my go-to radio is this. This is the new Boxer Crush. I've upgraded from my original Boxer. And I use these goggles. These are the HDZero goggles with a Speedy B analog receiver. Got a couple of large iFlight antennas on top and then some Foxeer lollipops on the side. There's nothing wrong with a less expensive radio like this Pocket, and I'm a big fan of these E-Sheen goggles for analog, right? You just kind of replace this screen here. Plus, you can even get the HDZero screen also, and boom, compatible with that as well. Or do I just want it as a screen and stick it on top of my controller? So many different options. You don't have to break the bank when you're buying equipment like this. This is my new favorite Tiny Whoop. I'm going to be flying this inside. I'm going to be flying this outside. I love the camera. I love how it flies. And yeah, hopefully we'll continue to see improvements in the Tiny Whoop game. I hope this was helpful. Good luck, everyone, and happy flying.